Where the heck is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2? That's the question we're all asking after yesterday's massive direct that featured one giant missing link. And look, I empathize with those of you who were super disappointed by yesterday's show. It's my most anticipated game too, and it's the sequel we've been waiting for since March of 2017. And Nintendo has decided to drip feed information, first in 2019, and then in 2021, and then definitely not yesterday, not even for a second. I surely thought we'd get some super snazzy trailer featuring the green tunicked hero, and we got nothing. Now, while I hope you found something to love at yesterday's direct, it's important that we get to the bottom of this. And today we're talking about exactly why they didn't feature The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, and I'm pretty sure we know the answer. So what's going on, everybody? It's Zach from SwitchForce. Hit that like button if you wanted Zelda yesterday. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree why it didn't show up, and let me tell you, all right, I can all but guarantee you it's one of these factors because we know how Nintendo works. We saw the show yesterday, and let's dive deep into why they chose to keep their most important, biggest game, the one fans would go wild for, out of their first huge presentation of 2022. There are 4 possible options here, and make sure to stay through all of them to let me know which one you think it is, because like I said, I can all but guarantee it's one of these. And first, it's the pandemic. Look, we gotta talk about the negative one first. I'm just gonna blow through it so we can get it out the way and figure out how to move forward. But there is a real possibility that the pandemic is causing development delays for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. We gotta be honest with ourselves. Okay, we've seen so many games be snatched from their release window. We've seen so many games be dragged straight out of their release year. If you go back and watch Awanua's comments at E3 2021, he said that we are aiming for a 2022 release.
We'd like to ask you to wait a bit longer. We're aiming for a 2022 release, so I hope you'll look forward to it.
And I know Nintendo has still said 2022. I'm sure that they really want it to be 2022, but there is a reality where this game doesn't hit. And we've seen a number of analysts predict that the game won't hit and will instead be shifted to a spring 2023 release. Now, it not hitting this year is a great reason for it not to appear yesterday. They just don't believe they can make good on a February promise. And look, I gotta give Nintendo credit for not doing stuff like that. Pretty much every other publisher in the business does exactly that. They want your pre-order dollars, they want your eyeballs, they want your hype, and they don't care about your heart. Nintendo's out here freaking apologizing for Metroid Prime years ago, and they surely will not show you a Zelda that they aren't sure they can hit. Okay, so we have to accept that maybe it's just not meant to be. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about the other 3 options. Option 2 is that, hey, it is going good, development is on track, they just don't have a set date. And again, I gotta give massive kudos to Nintendo for this. They don't like to tell you unless they are terrifically sure. And maybe they don't know if it's October, November, December, maybe it is still in such flux that they are not certain. They don't know when it can be, and so they don't want to tell you something that will end up needing to be shifted. I feel like internally, Nintendo hates delays, they hate shifting, and they hate not making good on release date commitments. How many Switch games do you see get a set date and then slip? It rarely ever happens, and yet for every other company, I feel like it happens once every month. Maybe even multiple times a month, depending on which month it is. And if you look at yesterday's show, they were very consistent with what was coming out. They laid out the first half in an expert fashion, right? We got March, and we got April, and we're going through the year double dipping on June. And the only caveat here is that Splatoon 3 got a summer window. Now, why give Splatoon a summer window and not Zelda a fall window? This is the one that kind of makes me think, maybe it's not about the release date, because they sure were willing to give Splatoon a generic window, and we absolutely know that game is coming this year. There's no way that one gets bumped. They announced that last February, gave it the 2022 date, and I am sure it's coming in the summer season. The third possibility is that Nintendo is just laying the groundwork for E3. They're prepping for an absolutely amazing show, and Zelda is at the centerpiece. They've got the table mats laid, they've got the chairs in place, and all they need is Link, Zelda, and Ganon to come be the guests of honor. I could easily see a world where E3 is basically the Breath of the Wild 2 Direct. It's a blowout. I was there at E3 when Nintendo dedicated their entire booth to Breath of the Wild 1. The game was such a big moment for the company that they said, screw everything else we're working on, The entire booth is done up like it is in Hyrule. The entire booth is featuring one game. I now think there's a real possibility that the Zelda Direct we've been waiting for will end up being the E3 Direct for 2022. Say they have a 45-minute presentation, I could see a solid 25 minutes of that being taken up by this humongous release. It just makes too much sense for Nintendo, and maybe they want to have a short marketing cycle with a guaranteed release date and they want to go hog wild. Remember that at this show, they had a lot they needed to tell us. They needed to fill in so many release date gaps that are coming up super soon. You can't prioritize a game from November when you still don't know the game for April. You can't prioritize the sequel to your biggest game when you don't even know what people can pre-order and buy coming this summer. And that moves us into the fourth and final option. Maybe this Direct was just too loaded. You see, this Direct had 4 first-party titles and Mario Kart DLC. We're talking about 4 new games to get people excited for, a DLC pack that is delivering on the most popular Switch game of all, and following up on some Switch games that look freaking sweet, like Kirby, Triangle Strategy, and Advance Wars 1+2. There just was no space. Where would you have scooched Zelda in? And I know, like, Zelda still overtakes any of those, but from Nintendo's perspective, I don't know that there was even room for Zelda if it was ready. Why steal the show? And I saw some astute figures point out that Zelda would have eaten the lunch of every other game featured in that show. Stuff like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and Mario Strikers that elicited awesome responses would not have been anywhere near as loud if Link was there to play. And that's just the plain facts of it. The Breath of the Wild 2 is their most important, most impressive, biggest thing they can reveal, and maybe they want to save that when everybody else is doling out their heavy hitters. Sony, Microsoft, EA, Ubisoft, they all got something fun this summer, and maybe Nintendo just wants to save their big meal for when everybody else is sitting down at the table. I don't know where it would have fit yesterday. You sit out on Mario Kart, you sit out on Xenoblade, what ends up moving? And all these games had to be here because the first half was so nondescript. And now we know the first half is loaded, and it's the second half that is much more obscure. And that will come into focus in June. Look, I am leaning towards the last 2 as being the absolute reason for the absence. I do not think development is struggling, and I do not think an uncertain release window is the reason. I believe it's because they're either saving all the marbles for E3 or there just was no space. And can you blame them? I mean, the good news is Zelda is coming. There's no world in which this game just disappears. There's no world where this game doesn't show up very soon. Heck, maybe they will end up having a dedicated Zelda Direct separate from E3 to start the marketing cycle a little bit earlier. But at this point, all eyes are on June for the next opportunity for Link and Zelda to descend and say, yo, our game has a name, and it's not the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Look, I was bummed as well. I really thought it'd be the big finale, and it wasn't. But there are good reasons that make a lot of sense, and they don't have to be bad reasons. It doesn't have to be doom and gloom. And even though there is a small chance that this game does slip, use the recent investor call, where Nintendo is speaking to the people that honestly matter a lot to them, maybe even matter the most to them, and they said 2022. So that's what they're aiming for. They're still on that track in February, and I believe they will hit it. No holiday games were announced. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was placed in September, and that means that the whole fall season, the shopping bonanza, is open season. All right, it's open for entry for a humongous title, a holiday hitter, a heavy, behemoth, AAA tentpole to descend and destroy the sales charts. And I believe that game is Breath of the Wild 2. Name TBA. We'll find out this summer. Let me know why you think Zelda was missing, and let me know if you have a different idea, but I can all but guarantee you it's one of those 4. So let me know what you think it is in the comments down below. Hit that like button if you're still pumped for the game. It's still coming. It still is going to be great. Let's just be a little bit patient and see what Nintendo's cooking. Until that time, everybody, stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, stay positive out there. I appreciate you so much. SwitchForce out.